The wonderful Kel Richards is coming up. One of my words is in the mix today. But let's bring in the panel first. Sky News contributor Jamie Rogers and Nationals Senator for Queensland, the LNP's M.Canavan. Let's start with a pretty controversial appointment today. The first public servant that was sacked by the Christopher government, well, he's landed a big new plum job, almost $1 million salary in Canberra. His name is Mike Kaiser, and he's going to head up the federal government's Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water. I tell you what, he was a controversial bloke as a staffer, as an MP, as a political campaigner, Matt. So his appointment to the climate portfolio, it's pretty telling.
Well, true, Peter. Look, I think there should be a new Minister for Energy, not a new Secretary for Energy. I'd much prefer that change, given what's happened to electricity prices under the first term of this Labor government and under, of course, Chris Bowen's watch. In terms of Mr Kaiser, I haven't had a lot to do with him. I did deal with him on the Olympics last year. And look, I must say I found him very professional and a great guy. And I do say too, look, I do think it's the right of an elected government to appoint the people they think will implement their agenda in the public service. And Mike Kaiser made that point when he was dismissed by the incoming LNP government. He did so with an enormous amount of grace, and indeed he received praise from Premier Christopher Foley for the professionalism with which he transitioned government to the LNP. And he said, look, it's up to the LNP to decide who appoints who their secretarial appointments are, and he took it with good grace and left. So, look, I'll give him a go. I just hope that all public servants conduct their job in the best interests of this country. Sure, they are there to implement a democratically elected government's agenda, but they are also there to be accountable to the nation's parliament, and that's what I'm looking forward to get back to doing when we're back in Canberra.
Mm. You are more charitable than me, because I remember when Tony Abbott removed a few appointees as secretary, Labor screamed like cut cats. There was a carry-on in the media. And, of course, when they do the same thing, it's all absolutely the right sort of process. So you're, as I said, more charitable than me. Jamie, welcome to the program. I'm great you're joining us. I'm great to say that you are joining us. I'm pleased to say you're joining us every Wednesday too. This constant debate about sexual abuse in the ADF. We talk a lot about, how many planes we're buying, how much we spend on defence. But we had a Royal Commission not so long ago, and the Commissioner says that none of those recommendations were acted upon. This is Gary Rumble. And we've also got the outgoing Defence Minister, Senator Linda Reynolds, who also herself was an Army Brigadier, saying why on earth would any girl want to enlist in the military? Why would a parent want their daughter to enlist in the military? If we've had a decade to sort this out, why haven't we?
Peter, it's beyond disappointing. The ADF have just shown that they're incapable of being able to have that cultural reform, which is so desperately needed to provide a safe environment for females, but also just an environment for respect of both male and female. And what we've seen is that the female participation within the ADF is at 21% and hasn't increased at all since 2021. And what came out in that Commission report handed down last year was the level of suicide. So ex-service women who have been exposed to alleged sexual abuse or misconduct, they're twice as likely to take their own life than compared to females out in the broader public. So it's not good enough. And the fact that we have seen this week a spokeswoman from the Labor government to say that they've got an internal task force that are going to start implementing these recommendations. As you said, this is now more than a decade. She has said it's going to take time to be able to implement these changes, but we've already had more than 10 years. The ADF go out and look after all of the Australians, and yet we can't protect the females that are out there risking their lives. We don't want time. We want to get this done right now. It is time for change.
I might add, Linda was the Defence Minister too. We also had another woman, Maurice Payne, and none of this changed under their watch, so it is systemic. Let's go to the story today about the cracking down by the medical watchdog, M.Canavan, on all of these doctors and almost an industry of companies writing thousands of scripts a month for so-called medicinal cannabis. Some of these consultations last a couple of seconds. They're dishing out prescriptions to kids. We've got people ending up, some of them suffering from psychosis. Just the other day I spoke to Ian Hickey. He's a brain and mind centre psychiatrist at Sydney Uni. He was pretty blunt on what's happening here about the commercialisation of medical cannabis. Have a listen.
Australia's had a pretty liberal attitude to medicinal cannabis as well. It's really driven by commercial interests. And, you know, we've had great trouble with tobacco, alcohol, other substances. We don't need to add this to the mix.
And some of this, Matt's about the drive to have us legalise cannabis, of course, like the United States. Surely we've got to rein this in.
I agree with you on this, Peter. I think the experience from the United States is very instructive. When you go sometimes to towns in the US, there's just areas that are completely wiped out. They're doped out, quite literally, with the free availability of cannabis. Of course, in those cities, it's not just for medicinal purposes; it's available for recreational use. And look, the idea was, look. I mean, marijuana's not as bad as some other drugs, so maybe we should let consenting adults do this, but I just don't think it's something we want freely and widely available. At the same time, of course, we don't go around locking up people for using marijuana. That doesn't happen. But once you make it the law, you give it a certain sanction and you get more widespread use of it. And it's just not something I think we want. And I think it's turned many American cities to the worse. I would not like to see that here. Now, I support, in that regard, I support medicinal cannabis for medicinal uses. But the law should be implemented, and it's clearly not at the moment. So I welcome this crackdown. I worry if we don't get this sort of crackdown, the people who do need cannabis for reasonable pain relief purposes will have it taken away as well.
Yeah, just like the really effective policing, not of the vaping laws brought in by the government. Let's go to more in relation to what happened in Victoria over the weekend. The Israeli restaurant Medicinal, which is in Hardware Lane, was attacked, of course, we know, on Friday night. There's a man in custody tonight because at the time of the attack, he was actually on bail for threatening to kill someone at an earlier protest. Now, fortunately here, Jamie, thank God we had a sensible magistrate at the bench in this occasion, because he's decided to keep this guy behind bars tonight. That doesn't often happen in Victoria, I have to say. But you've got to say there's a stain on Victoria at the moment with what's happened.
There really is, Peter, and this gentleman who is now behind bars, when you mentioned how he allegedly threatened to kill someone at another protest, that person had just asked him to please stop having pro-Palestinian chants in a loudspeaker, and he also allegedly spat in someone's face. These people think that they are above the law, and even when he is out on bail and told not to go into the CBD, he goes and does it anyway. It's been reported that he lives in Housing Commission and doesn't have a job, and instead the taxpayer is funding for him to go and be at demonstrations that are violent and they're intimidating and they have no place in Australian democracy. And unfortunately, Peter, what we're seeing, especially what we saw in Victoria last week, is that anti-Semitism is starting to become so normalised in Australia. We need to ensure that we're standing up and stopping it and making sure that people like this gentleman remain behind bars and really set an example that this behaviour is not acceptable here in Australia, and it's time to stop.
Great to have you on board, Jamie. Great to have you on the show tonight as well. Always good to have you, M.Canavan.